What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back once again with your weekly Pioneer Deck Tech. This week I went to fellow podcast co-host Chris to ask what he would play right now, and this is what he sent back. So let's check out Rakdos Kroxa. To change things up a bit, let's start with the deck's namesake, Kroxa. We're playing 3 copies of this grotesquely toothy giant to force our opponents to discard spells with the potential to deal a good chunk of damage. Of course, we also get to keep triggering this ability every time we attack with Kroxa after escaping it. And to help us get to that escape cost, we're playing 4 copies of Stitcher Supplier, alongside 2 copies of the recently printed Magmatic Channeler. We talked about Supplier last week, but as a refresher, this early drop mills us 3 and then acts as an early blocker to mill for 3 more, meaning 1 Supplier gives us a Kroxa escape on its own. Newcomer Magmatic Channeler, on the other hand, gives us a fair amount of deck selection and lets us slowly fill our graveyard with the spells we don't need at the moment, and turns into an impressive 4/4 body on its own. Now don't worry about any spells that ended up in our graveyard, because we're playing 4 copies of Dreadhorde Arcanist that can naturally replay over half the spells in our deck. And trust me, we're going to definitely want to be doing that with the selection of spells that Chris prepared for us today. And finally, rounding out our creatures is Chandra's biggest fanboy, Crew3 Co-host Young Pyromancer. Between paying for our cheap spells and then recasting them with Arcanist, we won't have a hard time making a small army of 1/1 tokens to get on the offensive with, or help protect our life totals. Alright, I think I've hyped them up long enough. Let's take a look at that spell package. Starting with our Arcanist targets, we're playing 2 copies of Pioneer All-Star Fatal Push to help kill almost every relevant creature in the format, and thanks to Kroxa and another upcoming card, we can easily hit Revolt on command. Similarly, the Fatal Push is our 1 copy of Bloodsheath's Thirst, that although sorcery speed can be kicked to destroy any creature or planeswalker. Finishing off our 1-drop removal is 2 copies of Wild Slash to give us a little go-over-the-top juice in tight games, or help deal with another early threat that our opponents can play for a single red mana. Our penultimate 1-drop is 4 copies of Thoughtseize. And honestly, do I even need to explain this choice to you? Which leaves us with 4 copies of Village Rites, allowing us to upgrade our Stitcher Suppliers into 2 shiny new cards and 4 more cards in our graveyard, or freely replacing an elemental token with a Young Pyromancer in play. For our non-Dreadhorde targets, we're playing 2 copies of Dreadbore to make sure we can kill any creature or planeswalker without having to jump through any hoops. 2 copies of Agadeem's Awakening to help flesh out our mana base just a tad, will give us a great piece of mass reanimation in the late game for just 5 mana if we want to hit all of our creatures. Speaking of reanimation, we're playing 3 copies of Claim to Fame to buy back any creature in our deck or squeak in an extra Kroxa trigger, and hey, an Escape Kroxa makes for an excellent Fame target. Lastly, we're playing 2 copies of Kolaghan's Command. This does everything. Buys back Kroxa, makes our opponent discard a card, blows up an artifact, and shocks a creature or player. It also can conveniently be recast by a famous Dreadhorde Arcanist for even more value. As for lands, we're playing 9 duels between 4 Blood Crypt, 3 Dragonskull Summit, and 2 Foreboding Ruins. Summon ruins aren't the best, but they're all we have to work with, so fingers crossed for a new Rakdos flip land, or a Blackcleave Cliffs reprint soon. We're also playing 2 copies of Fabled Passage to help fill our graveyard even a tiny bit more, alongside 4 mountains and 4 swamps. Finally, we're playing 1 Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth and 1 Castle Lochthwain, bringing us to a total of 21 lands, or 23 if you want to count the Agadeem's Awakening. Oh hey, looks like we have 1 more card before we get to the sideboard. Well, I guess that's not correct either, because it's still in our sideboard. That's right, we're playing everyone's favorite Nightmare Cat, Lurrus of the Dream Den. This now nerfed Umbral Feline still has a big role to play in our deck, letting us recur any creature in our deck, which means more Stitcher triggers, and more importantly, more Kroxa triggers. For the rest of our sideboard, we're playing 4 copies of Duress for the control and combo matchups, which line up nicely with the 2 copies of Necromentia, 3 copies of Magma Spray to help hedge against aggressive strategies, 2 Cling to Dust for decks playing Uro, Arclight Phoenix, or trying to make incremental use of their graveyard, and last but not least, 3 copies of Soul Guide Lantern for decks like Oops All spells that are trying to exploit a full graveyard. This attrition strategy makes for a good transition deck for those on Arena, as we inch ever closer to the release of Pioneer Masters, thanks to the deck having a close comparison in both Standard and Historic. While for enfranchised Pioneer players, it offers an interesting way to attack decks like Oops All spells, while giving some solid game against decks that try a more mid-range approach to the format. If you happen to catch this video shortly after going live, let me remind you that Crew3 is taking part in this year's Extra Life. You can find our link in the description below. If you donate at least $1, you'll be entered into a drawing for a Collector's Boost to Zendikar Rising. Or, if you donate in multiples of $5, you will receive that many additional entries. Oh, and if we break our $500 goal, I'll upgrade that to a standard legal draft booster box of the winner's choice. To enter, donations must be placed by 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, Monday, November 9th. Once again, this has been Ruckin with Crew3, If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the little bell notification icon to know when a new video goes live. You can find our weekly podcast on all major podcast platforms, alongside weekly deck techs here on YouTube, or streaming multiple nights a week at Crew3 MTG on Twitch. Finally, thank you for all our wonderful supporters at Patreon. If you'd like to see your name at the end of our videos and streams, as well as receiving other benefits, head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Crew3MTG. I'll talk to y'all next week. Bye!